Hello and welcome back to the Teacher Experience podcast. My name is Miss Dearman and I am a science teacher and Senko. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. We are actually on episode 5 now. I can't believe we're on the 5th episode already. And today we are going to be focusing on careers in teaching. So Miss Wylde has become a lead practitioner within just 5 years of starting her teaching career, which is absolutely amazing. So we're going to explore this today and the different pathways that she took, and also look at the different schools that she has worked at as well. So really interesting conversation. So anyone that's currently in teaching and thinking about this option as a career path, or thinking about, some of you might not even know that this is a career path that you can take. Lead practitioner is something that's not within the private education system, so it wasn't something that I was even aware of. So really interesting conversation today. If you have joined us on previous episodes, you will know that we are going to start every episode with our what went well, our WWW, and our even better if. So Miss Wylde, what was your what went well for this week?
Thank you, and thank you for that introduction as well. It was very kind. So my what went well this week. So I had a bit of reflection time on my classes, and I realised I needed to put a little bit more collaboration in, and a little bit more thinking time, and a little bit more practice. Now I did a little bit of reminder on the research, and I had a look at the guided practice, which is within Rose and Shine's principles. And Tom Sherrington has made a great book on that. So I had a little look at that. And I'm just going to read some quotes from it to give it my what went well, some context as part of my reflection process. So 2 of the quotes, this is the first one. The most effective teachers gave more time for guided practice, which is directly linked to them spending more time asking questions, more time checking for understanding, and using more worked examples. Now, within that, also, students need to spend additional time rephrasing, elaborating, and summarising. And they need to do this with new material in order to store this material in their long-term memory. So I thought about that, and then obviously I went to my teaching Bible, which is Doug Lemov's Teach Like a Champion, of course. Thank you, Teach First, for telling me about that book. And he has a section that's collaboration through discussion. So I thought, right, I really would like to link together guided practice and collaboration through discussion. So there is more emphasis on the children. Now, we've all used Think, Pair, Share, Turn and Talk, and it's actually a Doug Lemov strategy, Turn and Talk. So I wanted to go back to the research and think, how can I implement this better? So what have I sort of slacked on a little bit in my classes? Now he says, and I'm going to quote the book again, his book again. So encourage students to better formulate their thoughts by including short, contained, paired discussions, but make sure to design them for maximum efficiency and accountability. Now, I think what I started slacking on was the efficiency and the accountability. So obviously go back to the research and remind myself of what the most important factors were, and setting the pairs, which is fine because I've already made my seating plan, and really just make the cue in and the cue out really, really explicit, so they know when to start their pair discussion and when to come out of their pair discussion. Now, the bit that I forgot from the research is that when they come out of the discussion, so your cue out needs to be at sort of the crest of interest, so that when you get them back, they're still really excited about what they're learning and can then share that with the class. Make sure you have precise time limits, and make sure you can see engagement. How do you know that you've got that engagement? So I went with my classes, took this research, and I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them the key knowledge, help them practice that key knowledge from the lesson. And the way we're going to do that is by having 2 minutes of questioning from one pair. So they'll all be in pairs, and I will say, right, you've got 2 minutes to question your partner on all the key knowledge. Congratulate them if they get it correct them if they get it wrong. And then we swap around, 2 minutes quizzing your partner. Again, if they get it correct, congratulate them. If they get it wrong, correct them. And it worked beautifully. So that's my what went well. I implemented Turn and Talk from the research, and it gave my students more specific practice time, which has been really good when I've checked their recall. So that was fantastic. That's my what went well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, and some great quotes there. Okay, what was your even better if from this week then?
So my even better if is much less research based. However, still very important. I caught myself this week eating lots of chocolate. I was trying to get that quick fix of sugar. I didn't do the proper food shop last weekend because I was busy, and it meant my diet went a bit wafty this week, which is fine. But my even better if is to eat more fruits this week. So I've already done the food shop, and I've got lots of fruit and vegetables in. So I've got some healthy snacks.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. So, as I mentioned previously, today's episode is going to focus on careers in teaching. I'm actually going to share some statistics with you all that are actually quite shocking. So, 13% of teachers leave the profession within the first year. So that's 13%. The next statistic states that 1 in 5 teachers leave within 2 years of gaining their qualification. So by that, I'm assuming this means after they have gained QTS, qualified teacher status, 1 in 5 will leave within the next 2 years. Miss Wylde, are you surprised by these statistics at all?
From a personal perspective, yes, I think it's really sad. I think most people go into teaching because they adore it and they love imparting knowledge on children and helping them develop into this really well-rounded, holistic individual. But on the other hand, absolutely not surprised. The education sector is really, really struggling. We've got a lack of teachers, we've got a lack of support, we've got a lack of funding, and way too many hours and way too many jobs to do. So I think people come into teaching and have a realization of how hard it is and how exhausting it is. We mentioned the quote a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, or last week, about how teachers' work-life balance is significantly worse due to the high demand in term time. And I completely get that. And for some people, that high demand in term time is just too much. As much as you get the holidays, it is hard to have a work-life balance in term time. So I think, unfortunately, I'm not that surprised. And I'm really passionate about how do we teach teachers in teaching and how do we get more teachers by not teaching, because it's an amazing job. And once you've got the right level of balance and you've got the right support to get there, actually it can be the most rewarding and enjoyable job on the planet, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. It's interesting because I have friends and family that work in the education system, and then I also have friends and family that work within the NHS as doctors and nurses. And there's so many similarities between why people struggle in the education system and why they struggle in the NHS. And it is interesting that obviously they're both funded by the UK government. In my opinion, the two most important things within the UK are our education system and our healthcare system. So there needs to be action taken by the government, because when it comes down to it, those are the most important things in our country. And we are meant to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And it's quite shocking that we seem to be getting this wrong. So I'll just repeat those stats again for anyone listening. 13% of teachers leave the profession within a year, and 1 in 5 teachers leave within 2 years of gaining their qualification. Right, moving on to how Miss Wylde became a lead practitioner in 5 years. Miss Wylde, how did you start your career? Let's start from the beginning.
So interestingly, when I was reflecting on this moment, I think we decided we were going to do this podcast quite a while ago, and I reflected on why I originally decided to become a teacher. And I don't think I realised it, but I did some volunteering work in Kenya when I was in college. So I did 2 weeks the first year of college and 2 weeks the second year of college. And it was the most rewarding 4 weeks in total ever. I had to fundraise to go. And then when I was out there, I worked towards helping a charitable school have the correct buildings, and I helped teach some of the students really basic English and maths, sports, etc. But it was so rewarding. And when I reflected on why I became a teacher, I think that was the root of where it all started. Now, from then, I always thought that I'd become a teacher. I just didn't really know when that would happen. But then I was at university, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And actually, Miss Dimon, it was you. I'm not sure you remember this, but it was you that said, oh, there's a teaching thing going on at one of the careers fairs or near the career fair days. And she said, you said, you'll be an amazing teacher. Just pop your head in and see what they say. And I was like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. Everyone's going for these huge graduate schemes like we spoke about the other week. I don't know if it's the right thing to do. And you were like, just go and see what they say. So I went. To be honest, I don't really remember it. But I do remember going through the application process. So the company was Teach First. They are a charity. They work with low socioeconomic deprived schools. And they would like a fair education for all. They are an outstanding charity, and I sort of just believed in the charity as soon as I read about them, because why should someone that lives in a low socioeconomic area not have the same education as someone that comes from a much wealthier background? So I did the application process. It's really, really long, same as with any grad program. The assessment centres are hard. I remember, so I did the whole day assessment centre at Teach First, and they asked for feedback because obviously feedback is a gift. And they said, oh, my feedback was, it was fantastic, but there was a lot of waiting around. Could you not make the day a little bit quicker? And they said, no, that's the point. They said, we do that to make sure you're resilient, because if you can't get through the day, then you can't really be a teacher. And I was like, wow, makes sense. Didn't even think about the resilience side of it. So that was fantastic. Found out that I passed, and I was lucky enough to be placed in a school near my hometown. And it's called Summer Institute. So with Teach First, you do 6 weeks of Summer Institute. I was obviously pre-COVID, so it was all face-to-face. It was fantastic. There was loads of deliberate practice. You got to work inside a school. You had these fantastic trainers giving you so much in-depth information and supporting you at every step of the journey, as well as a really good cohort of new teachers as well. So I did that, and then they chuck you into a school as of September. So yeah, finished university in the summer, did my 6 weeks Summer Institute, and was in a school with a normal ITT, initial teacher trainer timetable, and off I went. It was scary, but it was amazing. And I had my QTS obviously within the first year, but Teach First is 2 years. So we had university days, some training days. So we had a really good triangulation of support. So we had our in-school mentor, we had our university subject mentor, and we had our Teach First mentor. So whatever you needed support with, there was that triangulation of support. And the support was outstanding on every single level of that triangle. And I think had I not had that support in the first 2 years, I probably wouldn't have been able to sort of rocket myself into my career. But they taught me what support should look like and how to take those next steps and how to be successful. So I really owe a lot of my expertise and a lot of my qualities to those 3 mentors and the whole process of Teach First. So yeah, that was my first 2 years and how I got into teaching.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So there will be a lot of people listening that took the PGCE route. So that was the route that I took. They are quite different. So obviously I didn't have that 6 week experience that you had prior to the September start. which I can imagine was really valuable. When you said you started on a timetable, what did that look like for you? Because for anyone listening that did the PGCE route, our first, I think 6 weeks mine was in school was just observing. So did you have full classes to yourself? Yeah, can you talk us through that, please?
Yeah, of course. I also should have mentioned that Teach First give you a PGDE. So instead of a postgraduate certificate, it's a postgraduate diploma, which is 70%, I think, of a master's. And then after you finish your 2 years, they give you the option to upgrade to a master's. I didn't take that option personally, but some people do, and they find it really valuable.
That's really interesting because a PGCE is a third of a master's. So yours was 70% of a master's.
I believe so. I will have to double check, but I know it was, or yeah, 2/3 of a master's, something like that. So the timetable was, so you go in, I believe it's 70% timetable. So it's just below whatever an ECT is. I will double check that the percentages might have changed since I was an ITT. But you go in, you have your timetable with your classes. They are solely yours, obviously, unless the timetable says that you're sharing. There's no team teaching. It is just a case of they're your classes and that's it. They do, however, make sure that you don't have a tutor class, so you can have that free time in the morning.
Amazing. Thank you. So I guess what I'm really interested in hearing is about what opportunities there were for you, and obviously how you then ended up choosing the lead practitioner role. So if we look back at your first 2 training years then, what would you say a highlight would be and what would you say a hardship would be?
So I think the biggest highlight for me is just being able to consistently try new things and learn new techniques and not having the fear of messing up. So I really took my training years as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to develop, and knowing that I had the support from my school and my school leadership to get things wrong and to just try and try again was really, really important. So I just thoroughly enjoyed putting into practice all the techniques that I was learning through Teach First and the techniques I was learning from my university days doing my PGCE. On the other hand, I'd say that my hardship was probably the behaviour, so dealing with the really challenging behaviour and high SEN needs. So the school I worked at was 40% SEM and 50% people premium. And it was a school that was really remote and had a lot of behaviour issues. So dealing with that as a brand new teacher was really challenging. But equally, I think that also shaped me into the practitioner I am today because it gave me that really high ability to deal with difficult situations and sort of come through the other side of adversity.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's great to hear that you had so much support. And that's clearly what helped you get through those first 2 years because they are really hard. And from conversation I have with people that have gone through different routes and also Teach First routes, I don't think that is particularly that common. And I do think that's a massive contributor to why we have that statistic that was shared at the beginning, that 30% of teachers leave within the first year and 1 in 5 leave within the first 2 of qualifying. So it's great to hear that you had so much support through those years. So if we look past your first training years then, what did your career look like afterwards?
So afterwards, I obviously went into my 3rd year and quite quickly I was offered to be a mentor, which was absolutely fantastic. It was quite scary when they first approached me, but we had a new Teach First person come in and they said, how would you feel about mentoring her? And I was like, absolutely, I would absolutely love to. And I think because I had such a good experience with my mentor and she really helped mold me into the practitioner I was and gave me all the support, I knew what a good mentor looked like. So when they asked me to be a mentor, I was like, well, if I just do what my mentor did, then I'm on the right lines. So yeah, I became a mentor, which was a really good opportunity and went really well. And then they also offered me Key Stage 5 coordinator. So the person that was in Key Stage 5 had to step up to SLT. So we needed someone else in Key Stage 5. So they very kindly offered that to me. So yeah, that straight after I was doing mentoring and Key Stage 5 coordinator, which was lots of new experiences and really interesting. It was also in the COVID era as well, so I had a whole new spin on what normal education looks like. And then I also, within that time, picked up my national professional qualification in middle leadership. So again, I was really grateful that my leadership team supported me in doing that. So within that sort of year, 2 years, I was given these opportunities to develop my skills and learn new things. And without those opportunities, I wouldn't then have had the experience to sort of keep making that step forward. And I think what made it really good is my leadership team were always there. Every time I had a question to go, oh, I don't really know what direction I want to go in. Is it behaviour? Is it teaching and learning? Is it data? They gave me the experience in all three of those sections. So the senior leadership team said, oh, why don't you come with me for a week and you can see what this part of the job looks like. Do a bit of experience with the teaching and learning team for a week, see what that looks like. Do a bit of experience within data and see what that looks like. So I had the opportunity to make informed decisions about my career because they gave me the time to experience what it looks like in a school. And then from that, I sort of, after a lot of conversations with leadership about what direction I'd quite like to go in, I decided on teaching and learning. I thought, yeah, that's the route I prefer. It's the route I'm really passionate about. And I think that's rooted from Teach First, to be honest. That's the route I was passionate about. So I chose that route, and then they said, well, how would you like to develop a little bit more within mentoring and teaching and learning? And I was like, yeah, brilliant. Like, what can I do? And they said, well, how about coaching other subjects? So instead of just being a science mentor, I was then coaching other people across the school in different subjects. So I picked up coaching a teacher in maths. I picked up, I can't remember the others. I had that opportunity to not only look at teachers within my own subject, but teachers within other subjects and how teaching and learning should look across multiple subjects and across the school. So that was really, really insightful. And then the last thing before I moved on from that school, that gave me the opportunity to be the digital coordinator. So we had iPads that were being rolled out, and they gave me the opportunity to coordinate process of how we're rolling them out, how they're being used within teaching and learning, and how obviously we take them in, deal with repairs and the actual logistics behind it as well. So I think within those 2 years, that school gave me the trust and the opportunities to develop in multiple different areas of the school. They gave me an opportunity to gain a national qualification and gave me the opportunity to look at strategic. So very quickly, I've gained experience in 3 really important areas to be able to show what my intent was, to show how I would implement it, and so impact. So those 3 I's: intent, implementation, and impact. And I think without that experience, I wouldn't have then been able to take my next step.
Thank you for sharing that. It's great that this school gave you so many opportunities, and I always find the word opportunity quite interesting because when I speak to people in teaching and they're given opportunities, it also means that they're unpaid. So my question is, you did so much for the school in, like you said, 3 massive areas. Did you ever get any financial benefit from this?
So that's a really, really good question. Not for the experiences. I think I went forward and said, can I have the experience? And because it wasn't the experience side of things where I just wanted information and to see what it was like, that was me off my own back saying, can you show me? Can I be involved so that I can make informed decisions about my own career? But with the Key Stage 5 coordinator, that was paid. The coaching wasn't, but that's fine. That was just part of me developing my interests and getting myself some experience. And then I think that, however, the coaching thing fell in line with the year 11s leaving and the year 12 and 13s going off on study leave. So although I didn't get paid, they replaced my exam groups with the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't losing out on anything. And then obviously the MPQML was funded, and they paid me for the digital coordinator role. So I was supported financially as well. In my opinion, I was very supported within that as well.
Okay, that's great to hear. Yeah, I hear of so many teachers that take on these roles and never get any sort of financial benefit from it. And you get a lot of people say to you, oh, well, you should do it for free because in the long term, you are then more likely to get a promotion. Obviously, for people that don't have as much time as I do, because I don't have kids, it's really sad for those mums that are teachers that then don't have the time to invest in the potential or the more likelihood that you will get a promotion. So it's great that you did get some financial benefit in some areas, and also that you put yourself out there and you were trying to work out where you wanted to take your career. So that's great to hear. Okay, so if we sum up the next 2 years, so you did your first 2 training years and then you did your next 2 years, what would be your highlight and your hardship of those?
So I think my highlight from those 2 years post-training was just being able to experience how to be a bit more of a leader and implement the research that I knew into leading other people to either implement it or utilize it, and then having that experience to understand school strategics a little bit more. So using a school improvement plan to understand how senior leaders and headships really go about deciding what needs to be implemented, when it needs to be implemented, as who they're going to utilize to do that. So yeah, I think my highlight is probably learning to be a leader for those 2 years and sort of the infancy of my leadership. And then my hardship, I think this is twofold. So COVID was challenging in itself. That was really, really difficult. I would actually say that I sort of hit a pivotal point, and this is when I realised I needed to get experience in multiple different areas. I hit a pivotal point where I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in, and I felt really stressed in that moment because I was really lucky to have people willing to support me, but I felt like I was getting pulled in all directions. And that's when I had to be assertive, and it was the first time I'd really had to be assertive and not lead upwards, but speak upwards in the hierarchical system. As much as we don't like calling it that in schools, obviously there is a hierarchy, and I had to speak upwards and say, you're overwhelming me, and it's all for positive reasons, but I need to get experience in each section of the school, and then I'll make an informed decision. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge for me, to go, actually I need to stop and I need to make my own decision, and I need to make sure it's informed and sort of go up and have those difficult conversations with senior leaders and the heads. But actually once I had those conversations, they were really, really supportive and said, oh, like, we're really sorry, absolutely have this experience, and this experience, and then you can make the decision of what direction you'd like to go in.
Brilliant, thank you. So next, you decided it was time for a change. Can you please tell us what that change was?
Yeah, of course. So I did 4 years at that school, and then at the end of those 4 years, I sort of thought it was a good time for a change. So I had mainly exam groups. All of my exam groups were obviously leaving, And I know that it's really important to get extra experience in new schools. So I thought 4 years would be a good opportunity or a good time for me to leave. So I started having a look at other opportunities, and a science teacher job came up closer to home, and it didn't have any responsibility attached to it. But I thought I'd apply anyway. It was a job right on my doorstep, so I wouldn't have to commute anymore. So I went in for that, and then obviously had the interview, spoke lots about all of my experience so far, and then at the interview, well, actually no, it wasn't at the interview. After the interview, they said, "We really like to offer you the job, but actually we've got a second in charge position available, and we feel like your experience could fit the correct sort of needs for the job." They said, "Would you be interested in the second in charge role for science?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely, that'd be amazing." So I had to reapply and re-interview for that. But so I did the interview for the second in charge role. I got the job, which is fantastic, and then I became the second in charge of science at this new school. It was quite a small department, and it was a really great opportunity for me. It was a very similar demographic. Again, I think it was 40% SEN and 50% pupil premium. So really similar demographic. It's where my expertise were. I again had the opportunity to mentor and coach and do the 2IC role within the science department. So that gave me experience with writing curriculum and doing curriculum management, as well as working with the head of the department on digital strategy, and obviously having a look at assessments, and all of the other things that come within a 2IC role. However, from that, I realised that my real passion definitely is in teaching and learning, and not necessarily other areas. I think whatever role I go into, I know that my passion is in teaching and learning and developing teaching and learning. So that's what I focused on within the department, was how to improve their teaching and learning experience, and how to use science lessons to make sure we're getting the sort of the best results and the best recall within the department, and then how to match that with digital strategy, and then other people within the department leadership, the other roles. So we really utilised our expertise essentially within the department. I then, however, got a fantastic opportunity to become the lead practitioner in a different school. So at this point in my career, sort of a year into this new school, I sort of had the opportunity or the decision to make of whether to go for a head of department role or whether to go for a lead practitioner role at a new school. Now, I didn't feel overly comfortable leaving the current school I was in only after a year, but at this point I had to make a decision that was best for me. Now, like I've said the whole way through this, my passion lies with teaching and learning, and to have the opportunity to go and do a lead practitioner role within teaching and learning, I couldn't really say no. So I left the school I was in and I went off to do a lead practitioner role within teaching and learning instead of being a head of department. So far, so good. So I'm really, really happy. I think it's been an outstanding experience, and again, I'm still drawing on all those experiences that I've had along the way, such as the strategic side. So I've had to, the new role, I've really had to draw upon my ability to have the strategic vision of where the school wants its ECTs and its ICTs to be, and sort of that progression across the start of their career. So really, really exciting. Lots of sort of decisions I've had to make along the way, but I definitely wouldn't change any of it for the world.
That's so great to hear. Thank you. It's great that you had the confidence to make that decision for you, the one that was right for you. It's a difficult one when you're a teacher, because naturally the people that come into teaching and the empathy and care that they have, we naturally make the decisions that are right for our kids. But we have to be selfish and make the right decisions for us. And it's really important that we do that. Can you please tell us then your highlight and your hardship from this time as well?
So, yeah, of course I can give my hardship and my highlight. So I think my highlight, again, always comes back down to learning. So So I had the opportunity to learn how to work with different people, which was a really big insight for me because I've always worked with the same group of people at the old school. I had the opportunity to look at digital strategy, but with a different type of digital. So I went from Apple to Microsoft at the new school. I had an opportunity to look in more detail at curriculum, and I had the opportunity to sort of solely work on how to develop teaching and learning within the science department on a bigger scale than what I did at the previous school. So I had a department that would give me the information, and then I had to give that information to the HOD, or vice versa. The HOD would give me information, and then I'd disseminate that back to the department. And that can be a really difficult place to be sometimes, because sometimes the messages aren't very nice. It might be you've got this extra work to do, and it needs to be done by this deadline, and then you get the department coming to you saying, well, I don't think we've got the capacity to do that, and then I have to go back to the HOD and say, well, they don't think they've got the capacity. And it's learning sort of where that balance is, and you sort of end up in this this sandwich where it feels like you're the bad guy, and you've got to manage up, but you've also got to manage down, and make sure everyone's expectations are met. That was probably a really big learning curve, sort of the bit I struggled with the most. But again, it was a learning opportunity, and now I feel like I've been faced with difficult situations that I can take forward and utilise within my future career.
Great, thank you for sharing that. So, for our regular listeners, you will know that we will finish this episode with a research bite. So, Miss Wylde, what is your research bite for this week?
My research bite for this week is actually linked to my what went well for this week as well. So if you have a look on the Education Endowment Foundation toolkit, they have a section about collaborative learning approaches. And as I spoke about collaboration and guided practice earlier, I'm just going to touch on some of the stuff that he came out with. So the EEF said a collaborative learning approach involves pupils working together on activities or learning tasks in a group small enough to ensure that everyone participates. So that everyone participating sort of links back to that. How do you know students are engaged? What can you physically see that says that your students are engaged? And that links back to what Doug Lamar said. Now, this small group, they're saying that it should be 3 to 5 pupils, because then you can actively see that they're all participating in those scenarios. So if you do this collaborative learning, it says that digital technology collaboration is actually less than the average progress. So EEF have said, obviously, it's really collaborative learning approaches are really cost effective, and they make on average about 5 months progress when they use collaborative learning approaches. However, if you use digital collaboration approaches, it's only about 3 months. So I think teachers need to bear that in mind when they're choosing to do collaborative learning approaches. Actually, using digital might not be the best way forward. Actually, students talking to each other without digital technology involved will provide that bigger progress and development. And the research says that secondary schools tend to have a slightly bigger progress. So within secondary school, the progress is 6 months, whereas primary school is 5 months progress. And then different subjects are slightly different as well. So maths had 5 months progress, literacy had 3 months progress, whereas science had a whole 10 months progress for collaborative learning processes. So I think I would really recommend collaborative learning processes to science teachers for them to implement in their lessons, because a 10-month progress is outstanding for it being really cost effective. Why would you not use that if your students are getting to get 10 months progress? So sort of links to my what went well and the research behind why I chose to try and enhance the collaborative learning approaches I use in class. So just to say that again, you can find the research on the Education Endowment Foundation toolkit. It's called Collaborative Learning Approaches, and on average, students will get +5 months progress. The best progress we've seen in secondary and within science, and the group should be no more than 3 to 5 pupils.
Great, thank you so much for the insight into that. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation and you've been inspired by Miss Wylde's journey as well. Please join us again next week on the Teacher Experience podcast. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.